All right, appreciate everybody joining me. If you enter late, just throw some questions in. Everybody knows how this works by now. Obviously, Ole Miss coming off a 4-0 week. Got a real big week though. Really got two big weeks. They got Little Rock on Tuesday night, a 4 o'clock start because of the basketball game at 8 against Kentucky, and then East Carolina, Cliff Godwin coming back to Oxford on Wednesday with a top 15 group of Pirates right there. They're a good team. So big time midweek test, a week ahead of Louisville twice. So 2 weeks in a row of really good midweek games, and then UAB this weekend to close up non-conference weekends. And with the lineup, it's kind of an interesting thing because I'm not overly analytical when it comes to lineup. I'm not one of the new age, just computer geek kind of guys, but I do understand the value of that too. And here's what I would do. I guess we'll start here if you have some other specific questions about the lineup. But I would move Gray Kessinger right now. I would get him out of the leadoff spot, frankly, to take some pressure off him. I think he's hit the ball well for the most part. I don't think he's necessarily done anything from an approach standpoint to remove him, but I think it would free him up. And I think right now there's just a little better options for what you're wanting out of that spot. I'd lead off Anthony Servideo. That's what I would do. I would put Dillard 2. I think I would put Keenan 3, and then I would even contemplate Olenek 4. I'm not worried about, hey, grab the biggest basher guy in the world, put him 4th. I think I might hit Olenek 4th. Dillard, Keenan right there 2-3. Olenek 4th or 5th. Zabowski 4th or 5th, and just kind of fill in from there. I would hit Gray 6th. You could probably even convince me to hit Gray 5th if you would if you would like, but right there 5th, 6th. I think it would help him out to get down in the order for a little while. I think Servidio's earned it, frankly. I think Servidio's played so well. He's run the bases well. He's done a little bit of everything. So I would do that and then just fill it in. I'll tell you right now, I still think what we talked about a couple weeks ago is still the case where Mike wants to keep giving Tim Moko at-bats. The at-bats are starting to look better, but Jacob Adams not doing much to not play right now. I think you got to play Servideo every single day. I just think you got to find somewhere to put him. But I do think that you're probably still trying to work in some at-bats for Elko and some other guys. Carl Gendels played okay in spot duty as well. But Servidio's got to play every day. I don't care if it's in center field, right field, second base. And I would hit him lead off. I'd move Servideo to lead off. I'd move Gray down. Frankly, I think it would help both of them to do that. Let's see. I'm going to write about pitching as soon as I get off this thing tonight, and I kind of wanted to spend a day and think about it a little bit because I thought about it last night a good bit as that second game or that last game was ending, second game of the day, third game of the series, and pitching is not probably as bad as any of us thinks it is. It's just different. Had you come into the season and said, look, Parker Caracci is going to walk 3 out of 4 guys. You're going to have some serious issues there with the command standpoint earlier in the year. You're going to get nothing out of Greer Holston, where he's basically not even on the roster at this point. I mean, he's still traveling, but he's not warming up. He's not pitching. Houston Ross got a shoulder injury. You're dealing with Etheridge and a blister, even though he looked really good Friday night. I don't see any issues with Etheridge moving forward at all. You would panic a little bit, and you still want to see a larger sample size, but it's just shifted. Austin Miller looked okay last season. He's that second-year transitional guy to junior college. And a lot of times those JUCOs, we say this every week, and I apologize if you just hear me over and over again, but so many times those second-year JUCO guys are just like freshmen, where it takes a little time to get going. So I think you could have a big year out of Austin Miller. You've got to have Taylor Broadway maybe figure this thing out and be as good as he's been so far in year one. And then Connor Green is a little bit of an enigma because he was so good as a freshman. He had an ERA under 3 as a freshman. He averaged more than a strikeout per inning as a freshman. And then he just spent a couple seasons not being comfortable. The stats were never awful, but he drops down to submarine, kind of spends a year toiling with that, not doing a real good job with it, was just kind of a guy. And then he looks comfortable to me again. He looks like he understands the situation he's in. He doesn't freak out by it. Mike trusts him. So I think you're just seeing so much kind of emergence from other people where it's not overly comfortable for fans. Frankly, it's not overly comfortable for me because I keep thinking, well, the guys that we always been talking about all offseason, that's who they're counting on, and that's not who they're counting on right now. So you can look at it a couple different ways. You can look at it as some new guys stepping up, and you just pray their sample size is legitimate and that it continues to work out. Or you could look at it the other way and say, hey, maybe some of the veterans come on through. Because the one that I do believe in the most is Houston Roth. I just think that shoulder, whenever it does get healthy and is completely healthy, might even sit him for a week just to see what it does. I think he's going to be fine. I think he really, really favored it. I think there's certain things with his mechanics that shoulder messes up, and that was the issue over the weekend. Mike said that it's still bothering him from a pain standpoint. So I think Ross going to be okay, and we'll just kind of see where it goes. But yeah, it's just different, and different's uncomfortable for a team just like anybody else. So we'll see what happens. Let's see. Let me scroll back up to kind of get a couple more of these questions. Always appreciate the cat head honeysuckle, of course. It is not the weather outside for that throw right now. I've got bourbon in my hand because it's like 30 degrees and windy. So no, it's not time for the honeysuckle yet. But maybe it's always time for honeysuckle. That's what Jay Tate would say. Thoughts on a serious decline in production for veteran pitchers? Kind of talked about that already. I don't know what's going on with Greer Holston. Mike says he's not injured, but I can't come up with a lot of reasons why you lose 10 mile per hour on your fastball not being injured. So I don't have a real good answer there. By the way, just not talking about Ole Miss, but Ole Miss is going to battle LSU most of the season. LSU coming off a sweep at the hands of Texas over the weekend. Eric Walker, their phenom freshman a couple years ago, hurt his arm, missed last year with Tommy John. Kendall said on Twitter today that he was 81 to 84 with an 85 mile an hour top. So he's having some arm issues coming back from his season in Baton Rouge as well. I think there are certainties on who will leave due to the draft after the season or who might be back after senior year. You have to expect almost all those guys to go that we talked about have made up the bulk of the number one class in the country a few years ago. I think Dillard's gone. I think Kessinger's gone. I think Zabowski's gone. I think Cooper's gone. I think you're losing the majority of that. I really, really do. I think that's pretty certain, barring injuries or something just falling off. I think all those guys will declare, or not declare, but will go pro after their junior seasons. Let's see. Will the Ole Miss lineup and Mississippi State bullpen make a lock for a national championship? Well, Omaha is kind of funky when you get there, but yeah, if you could combine the two teams, they definitely would be in the College World Series. Adding Jake Mangum to this lineup would be kind of nice, probably for everybody, wouldn't it? All right, let's see. All right. Thoughts on Olenek's base running? Well, I don't think you try to put a harness on him, stand on the base softball style when Dillard is batting. Ryan Olenek's a senior. You've had 4 years of this. You get what you get. You have to take the good with the bad. You want him to be aggressive. He's going to be overly aggressive at times. It's going to bite you. He's also going to give you bases because of it. I think doing anything whatsoever to harness him down would be a big mistake because I think it would take some of his aggression out. And you need him to be that spark plug. That's what makes him go. That's what makes him play well. So don't touch it. Let it go and take the good with the bad. Let's see. I feel like Hill could be a midweek starter. Yeah, I felt like that the whole time. I think we don't know that as of right now. They have not announced midweek starters for this week, but Caleb Hill didn't throw over the weekend. Max Chope didn't throw over the weekend. Even though that's not a prerequisite, I did find it somewhat interesting. So I think those are two candidates to maybe get a start in the midweek this week. Caleb Hill, I've been high on him since he got on campus. He was the number 1 or number 2 pitcher out of Arkansas. He is a true freshman that has as good as just natural stuff as anybody on the roster. He's just got to figure it out. We talk about harnessing. He's got to harness it. He's got to kind of learn how to pitch a little bit. And it'll come. I don't know how long it'll take for him. He's not as far along overall as a Gunnar Hoagland or somebody like that. But yeah, I would kind of like to see Hill get a midweek, let him stretch out, give him some innings to get in a rhythm and just see what it looks like because the stuff is so there. His velocity was down a touch in New Orleans from where I typically see it, but he's a left-hander that could really throw it in the 90s with some juice behind it. So I like Caleb Hill a ton. Let's see. What are the realistic options of Olenek becoming a normal member of the pitching staff? Good. I mean, he was warming up in the bullpen on Saturday night, and I don't think it was just for the looks of it. I think if Broadway had not finished things off as well as he did, they thought about going back to Nikhazy, obviously, because he was warming up at 1.2. But no, I think Olenek was getting the ball. I think he warmed up between innings to go ahead and kind of jumpstart that process a little bit and figure it out where if he was needed, he was going into the game. Going into the season, I've said, and I was wrong, that Olenek probably wasn't a very viable option just because I thought they had enough options without going to that well, and they really haven't done it. I mean, his only action had been during that mop-up time in the regional last season, but that looked really good the other night. I mean, it was 92 with some cut. The breaking ball had some depth to it. I was really impressed with Olenek. If you told me to go over or under 10 innings on the season, I would go over right now, and maybe not feel good about it, but I'd feel pretty good about it. So let's see. Zach Phillips getting a midweek start to get comfortable. I thought he was more comfortable against Long Beach State the other day because, look, Long Beach State is 0-10. Their offense was horrid coming into the week. They had scored 10 total runs in 7 games. But they're not 0-10 bad. 6 of those losses are to Florida and Ole Miss. They can pitch it. The Bayou kid, the first day is a legitimate ace. They had a couple other bullpen arms that I really, really like. They're going to win some games just through their arms. But offensively, they're not good. They bunt way too much for their skill set. I mean, I guess if you're Long Beach and you're a West Coast team, you just bunt. But it did not fit their roster very well at all to bunt like they did. And if you're going to play an offense, frankly, to get comfortable, that's probably it, especially with Cooper Johnson behind the plate, where you don't have to worry as much about some of the chaos that a team like Long Beach can cause on the base pass. So Phillips, he was okay. And I said that meaning okay. He wasn't necessarily good. He wasn't necessarily bad. He did hang in there. I'm not seeing some of the life on his pitches that I saw during intersquads. During intersquads, I really thought, hey, a lefty that can throw multiple pitches into the strike zone, a guy that can flash the fastball enough to get to pitch in the SEC, and he's doing 2 things right now. And I'm not really trying to be funny or cute. I'm being serious because I do think he has the ability. He's falling behind in the count too much, and then when he gets ahead in the count, he's having a hard time with out pitches. And if you can't get ahead and then you can't get out once you are ahead, I mean, that's a problem, and it's all location-based right now. I still think he has the stuff, per se, but he doesn't have the stuff if he's going to be as wild as he is. So I think he's got to be the guy to really pitch to contact, to really work to get ahead in the count. Behind in the count's a bad place for Zach Phillips, so they're going to give him a longer leash because, frankly, there's no other options right now, especially with Roth being injured. They need Zach Phillips in this maybe not in this rotation, but on this staff to work out. So I'm still a bit of a believer in him, but he's got to up the command. He just doesn't have the command right now to execute at the level that is necessary, and it comes from early in the count and then also late in the count. In Tulane, I thought that a couple times I really saw the breaking ball that would play as an out pitch a little bit, or when he really spotted the fastball in some good spots, but he's just not doing it consistently enough. He has not been consistent enough to this point, but I feel pretty confident he'll get the ball against UAB, and we'll see what else it looks like. Let's see. I don't think at this moment I've heard nothing about Parker Caracci getting shifted into another spot in the rotation or staff or whatever. Notice a lot of velos have been 86 to 89. Weather or just makeup of the staff. Weather's played a part. Early season plays a part. And then a couple guys have just been a little down. Like I said, I saw Caleb Hill down, but I've seen him up too, so I wasn't overly worried about that. Roth's down because of his shoulder. Hoagland was better on Saturday. Against in his first or second start, I thought he was down a little bit, but I thought he was back up to what we really expect of him early in the season. So I think some of that's overblown. There are a couple guys that would be somewhat worried about there, but for the most part, I think the velocities have been, given the time of year, about what is be expected. All the guys threw a little harder in New Orleans because it was 80 degrees outside. They just probably were a little looser, felt a little better. You throw harder in warm weather, and it is what it is. Let's see. Do I have any problem with Mike's pitch calling or pitchers missing spots? I'll be honest, I don't always have the TV on, and at home games, it's really hard to see the spots on a lot of stuff because we're all the way down. We're the last box on the third base side, so I don't see location as well on a lot of things unless I'm watching on my computer is too. The one thing, and I've said this repeatedly, I think that a lot of the 0-2, 1-2 waste pitches, or whether it's the pitcher or Mike or whatever, I don't know who's doing it, I have no clue. It's too far out. I think it's a wasted pitch because it's not a pitch that's often enough getting swung at, but it's just kind of out there somewhere. So I think if anything, I would try to bring that a little closer when you get ahead in the count. Let's see. Hoagland looked better. Do you think he sticks as a Sunday guy? Yeah, as of right now, I did think he looked better. I thought even you went into it kind of grading on a curve because you didn't know what to expect of Long Beach. Like I said, they were so bad offensively, you had no idea what that was going to look like. But he did look better. He had more command. Fastball was better, command wise and life wise. Still flashes that changeup that I really like. I think that can be a kind of a fade wipeout kind of changeup for him down the road. And then the breaking ball show spots too. So for Hoagland, it's just confidence. I mean, it's confidence and it's repetition. It's just kind of seeing you can do it. I mean, just because you're a first round draft pick doesn't necessarily mean you're the strongest mental freshman in the world or that you're coming in immediately ready. I just think he needs time. I think you've got to leave him there because he's doing well enough. He's showing improvement every week, which is as important as anything, because all the teeth gnashing over one game, at the end of the day, this team is still built for postseason. It's still going to be decided on a success or failure based off the postseason. So even if a couple weeks into league play, if you're not 100% sure, I think you got to leave Hoagland there because you pull him out and then you risk running into some confidence issues. You can't lose a guy with that kind of talent mentally in his freshman season, especially this early in the season. So yeah, you stick him there and see what happens. Let's see. I'm just kind of scrolling up, looking for some questions. Is Ely's pro stock dropping enough that playing college football might actually happen? I think dropping is probably not the right word. I talked about this in the podcast last week. More than dropping, I think it is just unknown. It's uncertainty right now. I think we will get a little more clarity when all these scout meetings are over, when he finishes all of his in-homes, when there's a little bit more of a pool of information that people are sharing a little bit. The only thing that I think, just my opinion, I think the middle ground looks less likely. There for a long time, you at least thought that maybe he takes some discount to play college football and pro baseball, and you go that route, kind of like Kyler Murray. But the way Murray has tarnished that possibility for high draft picks, and it was very unlikely for high draft picks anyway because it's just so much risk, so it doesn't make a lot of sense. I think that's less likely. I think it's all or nothing with Ely. I think Ole Miss gets nothing out of him, or at this point, maybe they get both sports. It's one or the other for me, and I don't think we're going to have an answer for that until late April at the earliest to kind of start seeing some sort of direction. But I do think mid to late April you'll start seeing some semblance of movement in one of those directions. Let's see. Bench looked really comfortable and poised yesterday, likely starting second baseman next season. Yeah, I really like his chances to start at second base next year. I think you guys are video is short. You've got Bench at second, and you don't have a ton of fall off. I think you're good there. I think he's a guy that's going to be very composed. He's going to hit. He's going to get more opportunities to hit this season. So I think you're really in good shape with Justin Bench. No relation to the Johnny Bench next season. Let's see. Jason Barber add anything to this team? Jason just, I mean, your heart's got to be in it. You got to want to put in everything for this level, and he decided that he didn't necessarily want to do that. So no, I mean, barring some sort of attitude shift, and I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean, I probably wouldn't have done it either at that age, so that's not a negative. But no, I don't think that would have played at this point. I think the fan base actually understands how good Tyler Keenan is. Well, obviously everybody knows he's good, but I'm going to write about this at some point. I want to go back and look. I just haven't had time, or frankly, I haven't put the time in. That freshman season last year, given the bat and ball changes and the era and everything like that, is almost as good as any freshman that's come through Ole Miss since I've been covering them or during the Bianco era. So I kind of want to go back and look at that as a judge. He's got better plate discipline than he gets credit for. He sort of gets overshadowed there because of Dillard. Because while he doesn't have the athleticism that Thomas does, they're very similar hitters in a lot of ways. So I do think he gets overshadowed some by Thomas. I want to kind of look at the numbers a little bit there because I think maybe his numbers are even better than any of us give him credit for to this point in his career. Elko has hit really well in inter squads and practices and different things. He just really has. He's hit really well. You can't give up on that. You got to keep giving it at bats, but at the same time, Jacob Adams is a proven commodity. He's a guy that you have to play as well. So Mike's got to figure that out, whether it be giving Elko more DH at bats, still being able to play Adams in the field a little bit. That's probably to me Mike's biggest not issue but decision as these next couple of weeks move forward, because you got to have some semblance of understood roles by the time conference play gets here. You got another weekend, you got 2 more midweeks, you got 4 midweek games to go. So to me, that's the big thing. If there is one to this point, is trying to figure out some of those roles offensively, and then it's just figuring out if you've got to make one of those switches in the rotation. Right now, Phillips would be the likely one if you did switch. And while I don't think it's going to happen the next 2 weeks, if you did, who do you give these midweek starts to? Because you're good. You have the chance to replicate SEC starts the next 2 weeks. You're going to have a good crowd on Wednesday night against East Carolina. It's a good team, top 15 ranked team. And then next week you're going to Louisville to play an ACC team. So that's huge getting to replicate. So who do you give those starts to the next 2 weeks to kind of see what they have, to show some mettle, and potentially work into or audition for an SEC role as the season goes? Because it's very rarely you actually stick with the same starting rotation through 30 SEC games. Does this team still host a regional after seeing the early pitching? Yeah, I'm giving them benefit of the doubt still. I think the bullpen is deeper than we're giving it credit for. Etheridge has been better, even with the blister, than maybe I expected in the early going. So I'm still buying. I'm not falling off that train yet. Yeah, we'll talk about Gray a little bit. I still think Gray. I mean, again, with Mike, the question was, well, I talked to Mike about Gray hitting leadoff. I honestly think Gray has been okay. I thought he hit the ball hard a lot. The balls just haven't gotten down. I would move him. I would take some pressure off of him. Let kind of baseball averages work out a little bit. I would put some video there, as I said in the early going, but I don't think there's some crazy change necessary. I think that we're probably, just because the offense has been so good, that every time something doesn't work out, we probably are overemphasizing that a little bit. But I don't have some issue with Gray's overall approach by any means. He's got to play. He's got to hit. He's hitting okay. He's just maybe lead off with this team currently is not the best place for that to be. Connor Green's been a game changer. Yeah, absolutely. Again, probably going to write about that when we hit the end button whenever we do tonight, because yeah, he really has. His comfort level again is just so good compared to some prior seasons. He looks very poised, and Ole Miss had to have it. I mean, this early season tenor potentially changes if he doesn't get the outs that he did in New Orleans last weekend, because he came in with runners on the corners, 1 out, in a game Tulane was winning, and spent two pitches, got 2 outs, got out of it, and then Ole Miss shortly thereafter took the lead and ended up winning the series. I mean, that was, to this point, probably the biggest inning, probably the biggest pitch sequence that Ole Miss has had this season, and they're 8-2, and they're completely on schedule. They have no issues right now whatsoever from an early season schedule. If you see Wright State, they beat Oklahoma State. Wright State's beat East Carolina too. So that loss, nothing to it. Not worried about it. And he took 2 out of 3 against the Tulane team that's getting better on the road in New Orleans. So as of right now, there's there's a lot of kind of small micro things that are having to be adjusted. We got to figure out, and frankly, we got to kind of figure out what it means. But from a major picture, Ole Miss is still completely on schedule. There's no issues. Ole Miss was not going to go 24-2 in the league again. I mean, in the non-conference again, they just weren't. So that is not going to be the case. The goal going in my opinion, was to be no worse than 20-6, and they're okay for that. They've got to keep playing well. They've got 2 huge weeks here to try to get to that point. But I still think 20-6 is the worst case, and you got to get to that number to be in good shape from a postseason standpoint as far as hosting and that thing. As long as you take care of the SEC that is becoming a bear, because, again, we talked about this earlier in the season. The Friday night arms for some of the teams that we haven't been talking about are so good that there's going to be a lot of trying to back end series for some of the better teams in the SEC. You got Doxakis at Texas A&M that's so good. Tanner Burns at Auburn is going to win a lot of games. So I really do. I think the SEC thing, other than maybe Vanderbilt, just because of the way their schedule bears out, I don't think anybody's going to get to that 20-21 win mark in the SEC. I think it's going to cannibalize itself. And frankly, LSU's a little overrated at this point. Everybody talked about them being number 1 in the country, but they have some lineup issues they've got to figure out. They're not scoring runs. The lineup's not being real cohesive right now. And their pitching staff, with Eric Walker's issues, with a true freshman, and then with Zach Hess, who has always been okay, but not overly dominant. I mean, I thought some of the crazy comments about Hess going in were probably a little early, a little off base. So the SEC West is up for grabs, and everybody's kind of got an arm, and that's what's going to make it interesting on the first night of the weekends. Let's see. I've talked to Neil about the NCAA basketball chances yesterday, but more importantly, Neil talked to Jerry Palm. Those are in the lead topic of his 10 thoughts that are up on the site. So focus on that, not with anything I ever have to say about basketball. Don't take my word for anything, but take Jerry Palm's, and it's there. Yes, I would if I was playing Servideo and Adams full time, I would put Servideo in center field. I would, yeah. Olynyk's been fine. He's been better there than I anticipated, to be honest. But even Olenek says Servideo is the best center fielder on the team. So if I'm doing that full time, yeah, I put Servideo in center and then put Olenek in right. Let's see. If I'm in charge and it's MLB style, what position am I signing a free agent? Well, I'm going to get an arm. I would be really, really tempted to add Jake Mangum, but I think that an arm is what is needed on this team. If I just had to go grab somebody else, I would go get an ace. But it's a lot like the Pomeranz Dillard thing we've been talking about for a while. I mean, this team is one significant arm short of being as balanced and as good across the board as any team that I've covered. So that's what they're missing. But I mean, everybody's missing something. That's not really even a criticism. Biggest surprise to date, Connor Green. Connor Green's the biggest surprise to date. I don't think offensively I'm overly surprised by anything. But if you'd have told me that Connor Green had the impact on the season that he has to this point, it would be him. And with Broadway, we just didn't see him in the fall. He had some arm tendonitis or pain or soreness or something like that. We just didn't see him, so we didn't know what Ole Miss was getting with Broadway. But it would be Connor Green if I had to pick. Let's see. I do not know that Cooper Johnson is a ninja, but he has played up to what everybody expected, what everybody hoped for this season. I mean, that's the thing with Long Beach is while they weren't good offensively, they were going to stress you if you allowed them. But he controlled the running game. He managed everything. He still has occasionally some balls pop off the end of that mitt, and that was something that killed him last season. That's something that can happen. But so far, it's come with nobody on base. It has not come in critical situations. He's been dynamic receiving and throwing in any kind of situation that mattered. So, Cooper, in a lot of ways, just because of what it takes, the stress of having to figure it out, Cooper may be the MVP other than Dillard so far this season. Let's see. What do you know about Tennessee? Not a lot. I mean, I like that. I like that kid they have from Mississippi from an arm standpoint, but no, they put up eye-popping numbers. Now they hadn't played much of anybody, and I'm going to reserve judgment because I don't think they're still a factor by any means. But they've been impressive from a scoreboard standpoint. Still, unless they lost today, I know they were one of the only undefeated teams left in the country going into today. Let's see. Do I think Rollison would have showed to Ole Miss if he would have had to stay for 2 seasons? Drawing in rotation would be a game changer. Rollison, look, he got his money, so it worked out. There's no doubt. Ryan Rollison, what he came to Ole Miss to do from a personal level, it happened. But you do wonder a little bit because this is a down year overall in the SEC and nationally in draft-eligible aces. There's lots of chances for guys to move up and surprise because there aren't those established arms. And then what he would done for Ole Miss, I mean, you're talking Rollison and Etheridge. Well, all of a sudden, it's a whole different situation. I think there's at least a chance. That would have been a gamble, and I don't think I could have told him to do it because he got first-round money. But I do think he had the opportunity to move up even higher in the draft, to be one of those top 5, top 8 kind of picks this season had he come back and had a big year. So the Ryan Rollison question is more than a fair one, but given where he was drafted, given what he got out of the deal, it's hard to fault the man. Let's see. Thoughts on Cockrell being the DH all the time? I'd spread it around. Cockrell hasn't done enough to completely solidify that. You definitely got to keep giving him at-bats. He's got the most raw power on the team, potentially, because of the backspin he puts on the baseball when he hits it. But I think Elko should get some opportunities if you're going to play Adams. I think Fitzsimmons still deserves some more at-bats to see what you have there. So, I would definitely not lock into to Cockrell, no doubt. Let's see. What else you got? I'll take a couple more things before I get to writing a little bit. Again, schedule while I'm waiting. Again, Little Rock at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, East Carolina Wednesday, and then UAB this weekend. Curious what UAB does real quick with Graham Ashcraft, kid that came from Mississippi State, almost beat State in the midweek. I don't think he's thrown a weekend. If he has, I haven't seen it, but he's been interesting. He really has. So I'm kind of curious if UAB does something there in its rotation. I think they're 9-3 on the season. One of those losses to Mississippi State, and again, they haven't played anybody. I mean, it's been a horrific schedule other than the Bulldogs, but interesting nonetheless. I would consider giving Graham a start at DH. Hits the ball hard. I still like him as a left-handed option as a pinch hitter right now. I think Ole Miss has a lot of other kind of issues to figure out at that spot in the lineup, if you will. figure out who's going to take charge of it if you're going to have a platoon there in some way. So I think as of right now, he's a left-handed pinch hitter off the bench. Take one more if somebody's got it. Broadway looks to have great stuff. Features starter potential. He does have good stuff. We haven't seen him stretched out more than the other night, but he threw a lot of pitches. He was sharp throughout. I'm going to say no, but it's a little bit of a cop-out answer because I think he can be really, really, really good, saying that he does come back next season. And also, I think that Ole Miss is set up for 2 really good seasons, barring something crazy, and as long as they develop like they're supposed to. I think you're looking at a Hoglund, Nikhazy heel rotation for 2 years in a row and being really dynamic doing it. I think Ole Miss with those 3 freshmen, I don't think there's a lot of starting pitching issues barring injuries for the next 2 seasons. It's those 2 guys. Let's see. But is Ely a better baseball player than Golston? Sinquez, obviously, what we're talking about. Golston's what we're talking about, I'm assuming. He's a little farther along. I would think. I think offensively he is more polished and developed than Sinquez. They don't have necessarily the same skill set, but I do think offensively that is the case. Dunhurst is a big prospect for next year. Who other than Ely or Plumlee? And then there's the middle infielder that is escaping, Connor. That I'm blanking out a last name right now. Incredibly fast, tons of speed. Kind of profiles like Zach Watson a little bit. I like him a ton, and I think he shows. So I think that's big for Ole Miss. I think they've got another dynamic middle infielder coming in that I'm just blanking on right now. Apologies to him if he happens to be listening, which I highly doubt. But nonetheless, I'll look that up. With baseball recruiting, I forget half the names half the time the way it goes because it's hard to cover because you never know who all's showing up. And you can't do battles. It's not like Ole Miss against Mississippi State because you don't know scholarship amounts. You don't know what the actual offers were. So because so few things are apples to apples, it makes it really, really hard to cover it from a journalism standpoint. Plumlee shows he can play in the outfield, but I just want to see what he does from a time management standpoint, especially as a quarterback. He's the kind of kid that can pull it off, but I do think there's going to be some transition there just because it's going to take a ton. I mean, that's why I said on the podcast a couple weeks ago that I thought that in a lot of ways the best thing in the world for Plumlee in a number of different areas is for Ely to show too, because if Ely shows too, you kind of have a buddy. You kind of have a partner to pull off all of these time management issues that you've got to do from a football, baseball standpoint. And those are just escalated even more for Plumlee, who's going to get a legitimate shot to play quarterback early on. So that's my thought. We'll see. I also think Plumlee is going to get an offer to play college football, pro baseball. I think he's set right there as the right kind of prospect and set right there in the right kind of spot to be drafted, probably 4th to 8th round. Somewhere in there where somebody's not overcommitting too much, but they're willing to throw a decent amount at him to get some rights, to let him play college football, but at least get him in a pro baseball system and see what that looks like down the road. And you're also doing it with a guy who doesn't necessarily have a position if quarterback works out. Look, he's an athlete; he's going to play somewhere. But from a scout standpoint on the baseball side, he's the right kind of person that you're willing to potentially give that 2-sport deal to. So when June gets here, I really want to see what happens with Plumlee, as well as Ely, obviously, but Plumlee for a couple different reasons. So anyway, we'll cut it there. I got some writing to do. Coverage at rebelgrove.com. We'll have coverage of all the games this weekend. We'll still make this happen on Sunday nights, and then we'll probably pull this in maybe in the midweek some too, as we really get into SEC play and get going, because there'll be some just stuff to talk about. I'd kind of like to supplement my 3 outs with some longer things like this where we can get to talk and answer some questions and go back and forth. So appreciate everybody coming out. We'll do it again this week or no later than this time next week.